December 19th, 1944, the frozen woods of Belgium. Imagine having only 3 minutes to live, 3 minutes from the first roar of an engine to the moment steel rips through armor. What would you feel in those final breaths? Fear, helplessness, or the disbelief that everything you had been taught about war was suddenly meaningless? In the silence of the Ardennes, German tank crews learned that lesson the hard way. Their mighty Panthers and Tigers, built as fortresses of iron, became prey in a new kind of hunt. This was not a story of thicker armor or bigger guns. It was the story of a machine that defied the logic of the battlefield. A machine so fast, so elusive, that it turned doctrine upside down. The American M18 Hellcat. To the Germans, it was a phantom. Heard but rarely seen, striking without warning and vanishing before the echo of its gunfire faded. In the winter of the Battle of the Bulge, the Hellcat revealed a truth that would change the course of modern warfare. Sometimes the greatest strength is not to endure the blow, but to never be where the enemy expects. Before the M18 Hellcat ever touched the battlefields of Europe, its story began with an idea. In November of 1941, only weeks before Pearl Harbor, General Leslie McNair signed a directive that gave birth to a new kind of American force, the tank destroyers. Their mission was not to hold the line, nor to grind forward like traditional tanks. It was simple, clear, and radical. Seek, strike, destroy. This doctrine was recorded in Field Manual FM 18-5. It rejected the German obsession with armor thickness and heavy firepower. While the Wehrmacht built massive machines like the 45-ton Panther and the nearly 70-ton King Tiger, American designers asked a dangerous question. What if survival came not from armor, but from speed? The responsibility for this experiment fell to Buick Motor Division in Flint, Michigan. Chief Engineer Joseph Roberts faced requirements that sounded like contradictions. Build a vehicle light enough to move like a racing car, yet armed with a 76mm gun strong enough to kill a Panther. Keep the profile low, keep the weight under 20 tons, and still achieve more than 50 miles per hour. To German engineers, such a request sounded suicidal. To the Americans, it became an opportunity. The Hellcat was born from this gamble, a weapon that embodied an entirely new philosophy. The M18 Hellcat was unlike anything that had rolled onto a battlefield before. At its thickest point, the armor on its turret front measured only 25 millimeters. The hull front offered just 12. To a German crew armed with an 88mm cannon, such protection was meaningless. A single shell would not just pierce the Hellcat, it would pass through one side and out the other. By the standards of tank warfare, it was suicide. But the Hellcat was never meant to stand and trade blows. Its weapon was speed. With a radial aircraft engine producing up to 400 horsepower and a weight barely 20 tons, the Hellcat reached 55 miles per hour on roads, 60 when the governor was removed. It could accelerate from 0 to 30 miles per hour in just 7 seconds, faster than many civilian cars of the era. Compare that to the Panther. 15 miles per hour cross-country, 34 on roads, and a full 60 seconds to rotate its turret. In the time it took for a German crew to spot a target, traverse, aim, and fire, the Hellcat could travel more than a mile. This imbalance created what historians would later call the 3-minute war. For a German crew, 3 minutes was the gap between hearing the roar of engines and watching their tank erupt in flames. The Hellcat's philosophy was clear: survival through movement. It was not a fortress, it was a hunter. When the first M18 Hellcats arrived in Europe in early 1944, no one yet knew if the gamble of speed over armor would succeed. The initial deployments in Italy showed promise, but it was during the breakout from Normandy, that the Germans truly began to fear this new predator. Reports filtered in from Panzer crews who swore they had seen American vehicles moving at impossible speeds, disappearing before a Panther could even bring its gun to bear. Then came Arracourt, September 1944, in the Lorraine region of France. The fog lay thick over the Moselle River Valley, reducing visibility to barely 30 feet, conditions that should have favored the defenders. German Panthers moved cautiously, confident in their armor and guns. What they did not expect was the sudden appearance of Hellcats darting through the mist like phantoms. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper's platoon struck first. In just 5 minutes, his men destroyed 5 German tanks while losing only one of their own. Over the following days, Captain Tom Evans and his battalion would rack up staggering results. 39 German tanks destroyed for the loss of only 4 M18s. Arracourt became the proof of concept. The Hellcat was no longer theory, it was reality. Speed, coordination, and boldness had turned what seemed like weakness into decisive strength. December 19, 1944. The snow fell thick across the Ardennes. The Battle of the Bulge had begun, and German armor pushed hard toward Bastogne. For the weary soldiers of the 101st Airborne, survival depended on one unlikely ally, the M18 Hellcat. The 609th Tank Destroyer Battalion arrived first. Lieutenant David Hagens's platoon, just 4 Hellcats, faced a wave of German tanks. In a single engagement, one Hellcat destroyed 7 enemy vehicles, another accounted for 5 more. By the end of the clash, 14 German tanks burned in the snow, and only one Hellcat was lost. That evening, Lieutenant Colonel Clifford Templeton's 705th Battalion reinforced the line, with a dozen Hellcats. For 2 days, these lightweight hunters darted through fog and snow, outmaneuvering the heavier Panthers and Tigers. In that short window, they destroyed at least 30 enemy tanks and inflicted as many as 1,000 casualties. On Christmas Day, the 705th struck again, destroying 27 German tanks while losing 6 Hellcats. The odds were brutal, yet their kill ratios remained extraordinary. For their actions at Bastogne, the 705th and 609th received the Presidential Unit Citation. The Hellcat's speed, its ability to cross small bridges, to move where heavy German tanks bogged down, made it the perfect defender in the winter forest. Against all expectations, it helped hold Bastogne, and with it, the hope of the Allied front. The secret to the Hellcat's success was not only in its design, it was in the men who drove it. At Camp Hood, Texas, later Fort Hood, the United States Army created a training ground unlike any in history. Spread across more than 158,000 acres, the Tank Destroyer Center drilled soldiers in a new philosophy. Speed is life. Crews learned never to remain in one place for more than 30 seconds after firing. They practiced live fire while racing across fields, engines screaming, guns blazing. They rehearsed in mock villages under the threat of overhead live ammunition, forcing them to fight as if death was always one heartbeat away. By the time they crossed the Atlantic, Hellcat crews were conditioned to move like predators, always striking, never lingering. From this training came a tactic known as the Wolfpack. 3 or 4 Hellcats worked together, circling, flanking, and covering each other's movements. Radios inside every vehicle kept them in constant communication, allowing them to strike from multiple directions at once. To the German tankers, it felt like fighting shadows. They would turn to face one threat, only to be struck from the side by another. Where German doctrine taught patience and deliberate fire, American doctrine taught aggression and fluidity. And in the crucible of war, it was this philosophy that proved decisive. If speed was the Hellcat's weapon, American industry was its shield. Buick's factory in Flint, Michigan produced the entire run of M18s in just 15 months. From July 1943 to October 1944, more than 2,500 Hellcats rolled off the line. At peak, 267 units left the plant in a single month. By comparison, German factories struggled to complete 90 Panthers in the same span, while King Tigers were produced in mere hundreds. For every Panther that rolled out, America built 8 armored vehicles of various kinds. The mathematics of war favored the Allies, and the Germans knew it. Beyond numbers, reliability mattered. The Wright R-975 radial engine, borrowed from aviation, could roar to life even in sub-zero conditions. The hydrostatic, automatic transmission gave drivers fluid control at high speeds, while German tanks still wrestled with stiff clutches and fragile gearboxes. Tigers and Panthers broke down as often as they fought. Hellcats simply kept moving. And then there was logistics. Fuel convoys of the Red Ball Express delivered supplies day and night, keeping Hellcats in motion while German tanks sat idle for lack of gasoline. Standardized parts made repairs swift. A Hellcat disabled in the morning could return to battle by evening. Where German engineering sought perfection, American production sought efficiency. And in the chaos of war, efficiency won. By the winter of 1944, the M18 Hellcat was doing more than destroying German tanks. It was rewriting the psychology of the battlefield. German commanders who once hurled their Panthers and Tigers into combat now hesitated, demanding reconnaissance before committing reserves. Hours were lost, momentum bled away, because of a single question whispered through their lines. "Are the Hellcats here?" This fear was not baseless. Intercepted German communications during the Ardennes offensive revealed commanders stalling entire attacks until confirmation came that no Hellcats were in the sector. The presence of a few fast, lightly armored American vehicles could freeze the movement of battalions that had once spearheaded blitzkrieg. German tactical manuals scrambled to adapt. They advised immediate use of smoke to blind the Hellcats. They welded spare track links to their armor in a desperate attempt at protection. They set ambushes with hidden anti-tank guns. None of it worked for long. The Hellcats were simply too mobile, too unpredictable, striking from one flank and then vanishing to strike from another. In trying to build invulnerable tanks, the Germans had created lumbering giants, slow, fuel-hungry, tied to strong bridges and dry ground. The Americans countered with cavalry on tracks, racing where no heavy tank could follow. In that contrast lay one of the most decisive shifts of World War II. By the end of the war, the combat record of the M18 Hellcat spoke for itself. Across Europe, Hellcat units destroyed 526 confirmed enemy vehicles, while losing just over 200 of their own. That is a kill-to-loss ratio of more than 2 to 1, the highest of any American armored vehicle in World War II. Individual battalions achieved even greater results. The 704th at Arracourt, 39 kills for 4 losses. The 705th at Bastogne, 40 kills for 6 losses. The 601st documented nearly a 23 to 1 ratio, a staggering figure unmatched by any tank force of the era. Now compare the machines. The German Panther weighed 45 tons, with 80 millimeters of sloped frontal armor and a 15 horsepower per ton ratio. The Tiger lashes 57 tons with 100 millimeters of armor. The King Tiger, nearly 70 tons, with frontal armor up to 150 millimeters. Against these giants, the Hellcat weighed just under 20 tons, with barely 25 millimeters of armor at its thickest point. By traditional standards, it should have been slaughtered. And yet, the opposite occurred. The Hellcat's radical balance, sacrificing protection for unmatched mobility, proved devastating. German tanks fought like fortresses, but fortresses crumble when the battlefield moves faster than stone walls can turn. The numbers reveal a hard truth. In the clash of doctrine versus doctrine, it was speed, not armor, that prevailed. The story of the M18 Hellcat is not only about a machine, it is about a philosophy that turned weakness into strength. The Germans believed in armor so thick that no gun could penetrate it. The Americans believed in speed so great that no gun could hit it. And on the frozen battlefields of Belgium, that belief proved true. The Hellcat was more than steel and firepower. It was the living embodiment of a new way of thinking. Its open turret, its paper-thin armor, its racing engine, these were not flaws, they were choices. Choices that allowed young American crews to hunt giants, to outmaneuver the very tanks that had once dominated Europe. In the space of 3 minutes, they could shatter a Panther, escape the crosshairs of a Tiger, and vanish before the smoke cleared. In the grand sweep of World War II, the Hellcat stands as a reminder that victory does not always belong to the biggest, the heaviest, or the most expensive. It belongs to those who adapt, who innovate, who dare to fight differently. That is why German engineering marvels became wrecks in the snow, while American tin cans earned a place in history. The legacy is larger than numbers. It is about the courage of the crews who trusted their training, who believed that speed was life, and who proved it again and again in combat. It is about an America that built not monuments to perfection, but practical tools of war, and used them with relentless determination. And it is about the lesson that endures to this day. In the chaos of battle, sometimes the best armor is not being where the enemy expects. As we look back, we see that World War II was not only a clash of weapons, but of ideas. The Hellcat was America's idea made steel, fast, efficient, unorthodox, yet devastatingly effective. A lesson carved into history with fire and courage. Now, I ask you, if you had only 3 minutes, would you stand still and endure, or would you move faster than fear itself? Tell us in the comments, will you say eliminate fascism? Will you choose to fight for freedom? Or will you declare your resolve to fight for justice? Because in the end, the story of the Hellcat is not just about tanks. It is about the timeless fight for independence, for peace, and for the enduring spirit of freedom. And that is the true legacy of World War II.